4 years ago, it was March of 2020. And when I say March of 2020 or spring of 2020, what do you immediately think of? You probably think of COVID, right? March of 2020 is when the world changed, and not necessarily for the good. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of things we can talk about as far as the past 4 years. But specifically, since this is the Health with Hashimoto's podcast, we're going to talk about your health. And I will apply it to simple, sustainable things that you can do going forward. We cannot change the past 4 years, but what we can do is we can learn from them. We can look at what other people learned, and we can apply the wisdom, anything that we can glean from these last 4 years into our own lives so that we can have a healthier 2024, 2025 and going forward. We're not going to stay stuck in what happened. We're not going to have a victim mindset of all of this nasty stuff happened, right? We don't want to stay there. If you stay there as a victim, it impacts your health. And this podcast is all about helping you have a healthier you. All of you, body, mind, spirit, diet, environment. It all comes together to make the whole you, and you as a whole need to be healthier. So before I dive in, first let me welcome you to the podcast. My name is Esther. I am a registered nurse. I'm a holistic health educator. I have 4 boys, a whole bunch of chickens. The roosters are crowing again, so maybe you'll hear them, maybe not. And I live out in the country where we did not have a lot of restrictions. Nobody told me I couldn't go out my front door because I live out in the country. My nearest neighbor is about a quarter mile away. It's wonderful out here. What was your experience like, though? I remember back in February of 2020, I was still teaching English to Chinese kids. It was with a company, and that's what it does, is it helps Chinese kids and kids from other parts of the world, but primarily China. It helped them learn better English because then they can use that and get, better jobs and stuff in the future. I loved my job. I loved interacting with these kids across Zoom as frequently as I scheduled it. And I really got to know some of the families. And so I was very aware of COVID when it started because it was impacting China first. And so I would talk to the moms after class and just ask them, how are you doing and what's going on? So I was very aware. No one has started coming to the United States. Again, I was aware, but I was aware not just as an observer, right? After working for 17 years in the emergency department, I have experienced these pandemics before and contagious things. I have been in facilities where we had to ask people about international travel, and we needed to know how to suit up for Ebola when there was an increase in Ebola in different parts of the world. We had been trained on that. I had been through some pandemics about SARS before, and of course, SARS-CoV 19? Is that what COVID actually is? It's a SARS virus. And so this was not unfamiliar to me. Also, at this time, I had gone every single winter on Facebook or on my blog. I did not have a podcast at that time. I had gone every single winter and done a respiratory health, like cold and flu season webinar. Or it started out actually as a Facebook post. And I told my friends and my followers how they can stay healthy during cold and flu season. And I had done a ton of research into it. And I had looked at, the flu or the influenza vaccine. And is it effective? Or are there other things that you can do that are more effective than the influenza vaccine? And not just based on stories, but based on facts and data, because that's who I am. I will dig into the facts and the data. I want to know the truth, not just opinion. It's not just hype, not just media. So that was where I was coming from when all of this started. And when it started to hit the national news, I went live on Facebook. You can still probably find it. And I told people about what they can do for their health. What I did not know at that time, what nobody knew, or, most of us did not know at that time, is what I said would not be allowed to be said for the next 2 or 3 years. What I said on that Facebook Live is get out in nature, lower your stress, increase your vitamin D, increase your pre and your probiotics. I said things like that because we already knew that they worked for respiratory viruses. We already knew that when your vitamin D levels were increased, then it worked as well, if not better than the influenza vaccine. They don't tell you that, right? They just say, here, get your flu shot. They don't say, check your vitamin D level. Well, I said that on that Facebook Live. I said, make sure you're getting enough vitamin D. I also talked about the importance of pre and probiotics. Now, this is retrospect. I have not watched that video, lately, but I know I for sure talked about probiotics because I had been talking about that for years by that point, because another research study showed that probiotics were just as effective, if not more effective, than the influenza vaccine at helping prevent respiratory viruses. And, that's a naughty word in health education. You're not supposed to say something prevents anything, because that word prevent is kind of owned by the pharmaceutical industry, and per government regulations, you're not allowed to use it. If you look at any vitamins or herbs or anything natural, it always says this has not been evaluated by the FDA. We do not make claims to prevent, cure, or diagnose any diseases, right? I have that on my website. If you go to healthwithhashimotos.com, you will see that disclaimer, because we're not allowed to say prevent. But when I look at the research, I could read off, the conclusion of the research that said probiotics worked as well, if not better than the vaccine to prevent influenza. So I had already been using very careful language, and I'm sure in that video I was very careful. My video did not get taken down as far as I know. Like I said, I did not go back and watch it lately. But I know I was talking about these things. I was also talking about stress, because when you increase your stress, you are more susceptible to anything. When you have increased stress, your inflammation is going to go up, your defenses are going to go down. And we've talked a lot about stress on this podcast. I have many episodes about it, and I have episodes specifically about different types of stress. Just a few of the episodes. Episode 7, I talked about stress overall. Episode 8, I gave you some tips. Episode 24, I talk about the adrenal glands. And 35 was about how you can de-stress using art. Episode 40 is about spiritual stress. There's a lot of episodes that I have about stress, because it's a huge part of our lives right now. And increased stress causes problems, especially if you have autoimmune problems like Hashimoto's. We need to lower our stress levels. So I said that all at the beginning of COVID. And then what happened over the last 4 years? I'm sure you have so many stories that you could tell me of your experience. What happened during those, first 2 weeks to slow the spread? And I say that in air quotes because there's a lot of politics that goes around that, and including the person who initially pushed it said, we have written documentation where, I don't remember if it's a he or she, but they said, during this 2 weeks, I'm going to look for data because I want to extend this 2 weeks, which makes me so sad, because some of the things that have come out of COVID are division and loneliness. Now, division started very quickly as people had different ideas of what was going to be the best. In retrospect, almost every single person can look at those lockdowns and say, we did damage. Kids in school, they have gone back. They have regressed so much. Kids just coming into preschool and kindergarten, they are a year or two behind where their peers would be. In fact, some countries have lowered their developmental milestones because kids are not hitting it. We're having problems with speech because of the masks. Kids weren't looking at people. They could not observe your face when you were saying things. So we're having more speech problems. We're having more reading problems. We're having more behavioral issues because kids weren't learning how to function. There was an increase in abuse because kids were stuck at home in sometimes unsafe situations. We took them out of schools where teachers are mandatory reporters, and teachers were calling in. Teachers are always telling social services when something's going on. And some social workers said that the scariest part of the lockdowns was that those calls stopped. They no longer knew what kids were in trouble. There are so many different things that happened because of the lockdown, but division is one of them. And division is a type of stressor because you're butting heads against somebody, whether it's somebody that you know or whether it's somebody online. There are families that have been broken apart. There are friendships that have been broken apart because of what happened after COVID, because of the polarization of how people felt about different things. But also, the lockdowns caused loneliness. Now, loneliness is now recognized as a huge health risk factor. And that is not something that I knew, like going through nursing school. And even later, when I went back to school to get my holistic health education, I did not know about loneliness, or at least this deeply. But now we know that loneliness is so bad for your health. Are you connected to a community? I want you to pause and think about that right now. Do you have people who you can reach out to? Do you have people who know what you're going through, who you can share the highs and the lows of the day? Or are you with people where you say, how are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. Like that conversation that's not really conversation. It's just words that we say. It's a ritual, but it doesn't mean anything. Are you in community that's deeper than that? Do you have a support system? If not, I encourage you to look for a support system, to find some friends. Now, not online friends. I love my online friends. I have many online friends. Some of them are my best friends. One of my best friends, actually two of my best friends, I met online. One of them I have never met in person. We've talked on, FaceTime and Zoom, but I have never met her in person. The other friend I have met in person a couple times. But again, we talk mostly online. We live multiple states away. So I'm not saying that online friendships cannot work, but I'm saying you need an in real life personal community, IRL, in real life. You need that. And that's one thing that COVID took away from us, was those real life community gatherings. Libraries shut down. I know that my small library, they have so many opportunities for people to get together. They have puzzle nights. I think it's pie and puzzle nights. They have game nights. They have teen activities, youth activities. They have times where the kids go for story hour. And I remember when I took my kids to the library for story hour, then the moms would get together and say hi. It was a place to gather and build community. COVID also shut down churches. Some of them never reopened. I talked to a friend just this week who we were talking about this episode, and she was sharing her experience. Her church never reopened. Now, I have a lot of very strong feelings when churches could not be open and yet they could have the Super Bowl. Like, that doesn't make any sense in my head. We couldn't have classrooms open, and yet they can have professional sports. It doesn't make any sense. You cannot make it make sense. It's a power and a money thing, and it victimized a lot of people, kids and people of faith. I feel really sad that churches shut down. People lost community. So if you're looking for a community, those are the places to go. Look for a church. Look for a library that has programs. Look for gatherings in your community. Maybe you want to learn how to knit and you can find a knitting group. Maybe you want to play chess and you're going to go find a chess club. There's a lot of different ways to get involved and build community, but we want to get over loneliness. And a loneliness, if you're stuck in that spot, you might have to work, and it might be uncomfortable at first. I am such an introvert. I would be happy to stay in my home 24/7. And it's a good thing that I am plugged into the community, because I don't think I would seek that out. I am very plugged in. I'm plugged in with my church. I help lead Sunday school and the Wednesday night kids. I'm on a school board. I'm on a board at the church. I'm plugged in a lot of areas, which is good because going out and meeting people is not my natural inclination. I feel like a lot of the extroverts, if you're an extrovert listening to this, you probably have connection. If you're an introvert, you might not. You might have lost that during COVID, and hopefully you're building it back up. And I hope you are, because some things that happen when you're lonely is it impacts your sleep. Your sleep quality goes down. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, we have talked about sleep before, because it's when you're sleeping that your body is healing and it's restoring, it's renewing. In order to have a well-functioning immune system, which is what you absolutely are seeking if you have an autoimmune condition, then you need good sleep. I have at least 3 different episodes devoted specifically to sleep, and those are episode 23, which is how your sleep can be a trigger for Hashimoto's. I have episode 31, which is improving your sleep one simple step at a time. And then episode 81 was part of my root cause series, and that is all about sleep again as a root cause. So episodes 23, 31, and 81. But we need good sleep. And when you're lonely, your sleep quality decreases. Another thing that happens when you're lonely is your existing chronic health symptoms get worse. Nobody wants that, right? You're already dealing with loneliness. You don't need more symptoms on top of it. But unfortunately, when we have chronic health problems, our symptoms increase when we're lonely. Loneliness also contributes to increased systemic inflammation. That means inflammation, not just like on your thumb. If you hit your thumb with a hammer, you're of course going to have inflammation at that site, right? No, systemic inflammation is when it's all over your body. And when you're more inflamed, when you have more inflammation, your immune system goes a bit more haywire. And what's the medical term for an immune system that's gone haywire? Autoimmune. It's when your immune system is attacking yourself because it gets confused. So we do not want to increase our systemic inflammation. We want to lower that. And loneliness increases our inflammation. Another thing that loneliness does is it increases the perception of stress. Now, I could not find in the literature that it actually increases stress, though I would say that if you're looking at stress from a spiritual perspective and an emotional perspective and a mental perspective, then yes. But what I was reading had more of they were looking at the health effects on the physical body. And they did say that loneliness increases the perception of stress. And again, so many episodes about stress. So loneliness came out of the past 4 years. And like I said, also division. Now, hopefully you can look at your life and you can see how you can get back into community if loneliness is still an issue for you. And as far as division, hopefully you can build some bridges. I don't know if some families and some friendships will ever be like they were before. But hopefully some bridges can be built, and forgiveness is all for you. It doesn't mean that what they did was correct. It doesn't mean that what they did, you're just excusing it. It means that you are releasing their hold on you. And there's an article I will link down in the show notes about forgiveness and the different phases if you're struggling with that. Honestly, I don't know if some relationships will ever be good again, but at least you can forgive and move on if that is a struggle for you. And then back to, there's one other thing that came out of COVID, and that is the lack of trust or the loss of trust that people now have with the medical community in general. There's a lot of things that happened over the past 4 years. I never expected to see top industry leaders, and when I say industry, I mean like medical leaders, super, super, super smart people, published people who were the very, very top. Everybody would go to them for advice, and they were shut out of the community. They were blacklisted because they said something different than what Fauci said, quite honestly. And people lost respect and trust in medical establishment. A lot of doctors did say things that were wrong. One of the first things that I noticed, red flag for me, immediate red flag, was when the vaccine came out and people said that you needed the vaccine even if you had COVID. I have back from when I first started to go to nursing school, if you had a contagious disease like chickenpox, you could go in and you could get your blood tested and see if you had enough. They call it getting a titer. And then you would not need a vaccination because what you had was more powerful than what they were trying to give you with a vaccination. And when people just completely dismissed that, that was a huge red flag for me. And the doctors who were not even allowing for that conversation, I lost trust with them. I lost trust with my own colleagues. And then also the ugliness that came out of it, the name calling, them putting people down if they dared express a different opinion, even an opinion backed up with facts. It was really hard for most people to see the doctors, the people that we are supposed to trust with our health and with our lives. Honestly, sometimes it was really hard to see them just parroting the propaganda. And I'm very sorry if all of this, you're like, wait, what? All of what they said was true. It wasn't. And I do have facts for all of this. Like I said at the beginning, and like I've said, throughout the 80 some episodes, I don't go on media and hype. I go on research and facts and truth, and I will always share that with you. And I think the loss of truth was really hard in COVID. But you know what? Those things that I said at the beginning in my first live stream, they rang true. We still know that vitamin D is one of the top things that you can do to protect yourself from getting COVID and when you have COVID. One thing that I learned was that glutathione, which I've talked about before on the podcast, it's like, a master detoxifier in your body. Well, glutathione, the endogenous stuff that you create, that is even more impactful than vitamin D. And one thing that glutathione does is it controls the vitamin D in your body. So it makes sense. But when you have more endogenous glutathione, you had better outcomes. Glutathione is antiviral, it is anti-inflammatory, and it is an anticoagulant. Not like a strong anticoagulant, but it has those properties. And what was COVID? It was a virus, so you need an antiviral, right? It causes inflammation, so you need an anti-inflammatory, right? And COVID, but mostly the vaccine, it causes blood clotting problems, right? So glutathione is amazing. So make sure that you're increasing your glutathione. You can do that by eating specific veggies, like broccoli sprouts are the one of the best ways to do it. And you can sprout broccoli in a mason jar on your windowsill. It's super easy unless you kill it all the time, which I do. Sometimes it works great, and sometimes they all die. I don't know. If you have any hints, let me know, because I love it when they're working well. Also, increasing glutathione, you can take herbs that will increase it within your body. Glutathione is not something that you can necessarily just take a glutathione pill. It's not very bioavailable, meaning it's not available to your body when you take it as a pill. So you need to make your own to have the best glutathione. And again, we've talked about that on the podcast before. Every single day, I take a blend of 5 herbs, and that increases my own glutathione production by 300%. Was I taking that during COVID over the past 4 years? Yes. And will I continue taking it? Absolutely. Because I want all of those benefits. So simple, sustainable things going forward. Make sure your vitamin D level is good. Make sure you're getting enough foods and herbs that will help your glutathione. Decrease if you're smoking still or vaping. Well, stop that. You need your lungs to be in good shape so that they can handle whatever is coming. Make sure that you're eating fruits and veggies. Make sure you're active. All of these things we already knew, and we know them still. The foundations of health have not changed just because COVID changed the world. The foundations of health are still applicable. Lower your stress, increase your sleep, and increase the quality of your sleep. Make sure that you're getting enough movement in the day. Make sure you're eating enough fruits and veggies, real foods. Decrease your processed foods. Get out in the sunlight. Help your vitamin D. All of these things, they are foundational, and those are the things that we knew about before and we still know. I hope that you do something today to increase your overall health. And hey, when you're looking for community, come join our community. It is a teeny tiny baby community, and it is on the app. And as of right now, it's still not as its own Health with Hashimoto's app on the App Store and the Google Play Store, but I do have instructions that you can get it down in the show notes. I hope you come and join, make a post, say hello, because we really want to build this community. Like I said, some of my best friends, I met them online, and we communicate all the time because we are supportive of each other. And so come over, join the community, and let's build some friendship. I will see you on the next episode of Health with Hashimoto's. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Please be sure to discuss any concerns and plans with your trusted healthcare professional.